Śreya being talking about the delayed gratification with a long-term perspective in mind, whereas Priya talking about instant gratification, which can give you a benefit right now, but has a hidden cost in terms of what happens in the longer duration.
But at the same time, when I compare with Indonesia, it looks like our borrowing costs, our yields are higher, and that's also because of states' indiscriminate spending on unconditional transfers. So it is a caution that the center is saying, better be don't spend much on cash transfers and look at long-term benefit.
If I keep on giving money for consumption purposes, I am not building anything for the future.
Exactly.
And I don't have an end goal when I can exit. So this is not just that the present yield is going to go up, which sir mentioned that it is 6.7% we are paying on the debt. It's also about till when are you going to take this? What is the exit plan you have? The 10 second, if that whole citizen, everyone would agree to, you would have a better scenario there. This is where your delayed gratification, though you can't see it right now, is going to give you or make your lives sustainable in the city.
For example, when we compare India with China in terms of startups, we are more coming up with Zomato or Swiggy, not the deep technology. Because deep technology startups require something beyond thinking about money. State is not about commercial state. It's not about that the state is becoming commercial. Entrepreneur is somebody who understands risk. In similar manner, the state should also understand risk.
Hello everyone. So government has recently released the economic survey for 2025-26. And for this time, the economic survey is not starting with any specific stats. It is covering a philosophy from Katha Upanishad, which is regarding Priya and Śreya. Now the Priya is talking about the short-term gains, which might also include sometime the aspects of populism, but the concept of Śreya, which talks about the long-term gratification. So basically these are reflecting the aspects of Indian economy as well. So to decode and discuss this particular concept, I am joined by Piyush Sir and Sudhir Sir. Hello sir.
Thank you, Vishal.
So Piyush Sir, I would like to start with you first, that the economic survey is highlighting regarding the concept of Priya and Śreya. But these particular concept of late we have not heard a lot. So what does they exactly mean and how an aspirant should be delving into these particular philosophies from the perspective of economy?
So as you explained the meaning of these terms, Śreya being talking about the delayed gratification with a long-term perspective in mind, whereas Priya talking about instant gratification, which can give you a benefit right now, but has a hidden cost in terms of what happens in the longer duration. Now, this could be very well understood in the present context when the whole the trade has been weaponized and how exactly geopolitics is becoming more and more intense with respect to the actions being taken by different countries. Now, the action or the response to this is based on what you've built. So if you're focused on the instant gratification part, we see that there are not a lot of options which you can respond with. But if you have thought about the long-term perspective, building assets, the investment-led growth, this is where you would have better responses to it. So economy in the short term can focus on its consumption to boost its growth, but in the long term, it has to have a lot of assets, which gives them the durability to move with whatever the adverse consequences being. So Śreya talking about the investment-led growth having more asset being built, whereas the short-term being the consumption-led. So if we see the responses and see the growth profile of different nations, we find those who have done it better with respect to long-term are in a position to deal with it better.
Right. So to some extent, Sudhir sir, can we talk about that Priya is basically talking about the fiscal populism or but how we have to see this particular concept from the perspective of the center and state relation, because these terms are very, very frequently going to be utilized now onwards.
So Vishal, before I talk about center-state relations, let's try to understand the discussions on intergenerational equity. That is the most important aspect. So for example, the government has mentioned that they're going to reduce their debt to GDP to almost like 50% by 2030-31. This is what we are saying. So this is a very important observation in the economic survey. And at the same time, government also says, if I take on too much of debt, that will distort intergenerational equity. Because as of now also, the major chunk of our revenue expenditures is into interest payments. So when I'm tied down with interest payments, I can't spend much on investments, as Sir was talking about. So if I have to really work on spending on investment also, that is long term, First of all, I should reduce my spending on interest payments. That means, in the short term, I should not be borrowing for unproductive purposes, because that can create a lot of trouble moving forward in the future. Now, what economic survey says, as far as fiscal prudence is concerned, the center has done a good job. That is what the survey says. The center has reduced its debt to GDP, and the targets look decent. But at the same time, center talks about states, and the survey says that the center is not happy, especially with respect to the way states are spending money, and that too with respect to the unconditional cash transfers. But at the same time, states were able to maintain their capital expenditure up to 2.4%. This was possible because of the long-term loans which were given, 50-year loans given by the center to the states. So that is a good thing. But at the same time, these unconditional transfers which were done by the state, most of the I can tell you, like around 10 states which were into revenue surplus have become deficit recently. Now, what is the impact of that? When India has to raise money from the market, or when government has to raise money, our bond yields when we look at. So it is overall bond yield that is checked. Okay, it includes the general debt. It includes the center, state and UT. So because of that reason, our bond yields were around 6.7%. And if I compare that with Indonesia, it's around 6.3. That means, in spite of both the countries having the same credit rating, BBB, we know that three credit rating agencies have upgraded our rating because of our fiscal prudence. But at the same time, when I compare with Indonesia, it looks like our borrowing costs, our yields are higher. And that's also because of states' indiscriminate spending on unconditional transfers. So it is a caution that the center is saying, better be don't spend much on cash transfers and look at long-term benefit. So this is what the economic survey is saying, and that's a fantastic idea.
Right.
And to put some light on debt also. Actually, when the government definition of debt, for example, earlier as per FRBM, we used to take only around, let's say we were permitted to take 3% of GDP. That is, I'm talking about the fiscal deficit, new debt. But today we are saying we are not so keen with respect to maintaining that 3%. We are more talking about the denominator. Denominator is the debt. Okay, so that means if I can increase my GDP, I can increase my debt also. You're only talking in terms of debt to GDP. Now, this is again a risk which I find, okay, moving forward.
Right. So basically what you are suggesting is that there are certain populist policies that that is also including even the interest payment that had to be reduced in order to create the long-term assets. That's what is being highlighted. But that defines, I think, the state's role. Piyush sir, now talking about that there are certain responsibilities and the onus also lies on the state and the citizen also. So the citizens are also the equal partner in all these particular aspects. So now what type of like changes, maybe the behavioral changes or other type of changes that have to be incorporated at the citizen side in order to conceptualize and include that particular concept of Śreya or the delayed gratification?
Before we talk about the citizen aspect, like what the role and responsibility would be, I would like to add one more point here when you mentioned about the state capacity and also the states spending more on unconditional transfers. The whole point is they're sending a lot of money in order to boost consumption. But what is the end goal, what we are looking at? The end goal has to be defined, then only my exit can be planned. If I keep on giving money for consumption purposes, I am not building anything for the future.
Exactly.
And I don't have an end goal when I can exit. So this is not just that the present yield is going to go up, which sir mentioned that it is 6.7% we are paying on the debt. It's also about till when are you going to take this? What is the exit plan you have? So when you look for instant gratification, you have to keep on providing that instant gratification without an end goal in mind. But if you look for long-term perspective building assets, you would have an end goal, how exactly the money will be used to build the asset.
Okay.
This is how then consumption investment, because now you're giving money for consumption. You're not being able to give money for investment purposes. The second thing, when you talk about the citizen behavior and all of this, I'll take a very small example in this. Now, when you observe a lot of traffic movement in any particular big city, you'll see a lot of people cutting lanes.
Right.
Now, cutting lanes is the instant gratification that I could save like 10 seconds of my time. But if you see in the long term, I am creating a lot of chaos in the city with respect to traffic management. Not only are people losing their lives on the roads, you see the number of accidents that are happening, Secondly, the traffic congestion is adding to the housing cost. So if there's a lot of congestion for like 20 kilometers, I'll take a lot of time to travel. I will prefer living near to my workplace. Traveling or living near to my workplace, the demand is so high, the supply is not matching it, the cost of house would increase. So that 10 second of time, if every particular citizen is not willing to wait for, it has a lot of cost in terms of the lives lost on the city and also the housing cost which most of the major cities are experiencing. Just check the prices of the houses, not just price, the renting market also, how expensive it has become.
Right.
The 10 second, if that whole citizen, everyone would agree to, you would have a better scenario there. This is where your delayed gratification, though you can't see it right now, is going to give you or make your lives sustainable in the city.
Exactly. So, like to achieve the concept of the Viksit Bharat, that if we want to achieve, so delayed gratification has to be in our behavior also. Otherwise, it would be like that everyone would want to ensure their own instant gratification, and the Shreya will be like a distant dream. Then.
This you can see in the terms of waste management also. My instant gratification is if I keep my home clean, but outside I go, I'm not keeping it clean. The waste and the burden on them, the health expenditure keeps on increasing because our communicable diseases is something getting out of control.
Right. So, Sudhir sir, when we are talking about already the instant gratification versus the delayed gratification one, and the government is also highlighting a lot regarding the Viksit Bharat and the objective to achieve it by 2047. So, in order to achieve that, I think these particular concept and understanding of these concept is very, very important. But the surveys, sir, also highlighting regarding a concept of the entrepreneurial state. So can you explain like what exactly survey talks about when it is talking about the entrepreneurial state and how it is going to ensure a better development of the country in terms of like Viksit Bharat?
Vishal, I'll just add on to 2 points what Sir has talked about. So when economic survey also says, when we look at long term, okay, so when we look at Sreya, 1, the state, 2, we have the private, then we have the society and the individual. So the change has to come from every aspect. For example, when we compare India with China in terms of startups, we are more coming up with Zomato or Swiggy, not the deep technology. Because deep technology startups require something beyond thinking about money. It requires facilitation by the government also. Because easy approvals and long-term sustenance and love towards technology. That is what will build such kind of startups. That I will put it as Sreya. Basically, when we look at our startups, of course, I'm not saying our startups are bad, but rather we are building a startup just to sell it off and move out. And this culture has increased a lot.
Right.
And therefore, when we look at AI-based startups and deep technology startups of China, this is what is going to decide our futures in the next few years. So this is something which is visible everywhere, from people's behavior to the state, even state in terms of giving approvals, incentives, society accepting entrepreneurs.
Right.
So it's an overall package.
Exactly.
Now coming to entrepreneurial state, why entrepreneurial state? As entrepreneurial state is not about commercial state. It's not about that the state is becoming commercial.
Right.
Entrepreneur is somebody who understands risk. In similar manner, the state should also understand risk.
Right.
Because the economic survey says in spite of India's macroeconomic stability, there are a lot of other problems which are still creating trouble for still creating trouble with respect to my currency value or the portfolio investors moving out. We're not insulated anymore.
Exactly.
Okay, so what economic survey says, entrepreneurial state understands risk, that there is risk. Yes, there is risk. It will take calculated risks. It moves forward. If the situation is very bad, then it will not stop moving. It will not be paralyzed. At least it will take baby steps towards the goal. This is what an entrepreneurial state does. It experiments. If it fails, it changes its direction. This is what an entrepreneurial state does. And that is what the government is also trying to do right now. So when I look at entrepreneurial state as such on a wider perspective, so it is a state which takes risk and it takes baby steps when the situation is not there. As Einstein talks about compounding. Compounding is something like the 8th wonder. I am not paralyzed. I'll take baby steps every day, and that will bring a big change in terms of Viksit Bharat. So this is what they're talking about. And when we look at economic survey's explanation also, it talks about a combination of marathon and sprint right now. In fact, the survey says we should run a marathon like a sprint. This is something it is saying.
Right.
How do I run a marathon like a sprint? Marathon is always we're looking at long term. We understand that short term there are a lot of risk. War is there. Oil prices are fluctuating. Rupee value is depreciating. Okay. The trade policies are not constant. So these are all immediate risks. But at the same time, when I look at long term, okay, so if I have to take the reap the benefits of my human capital, and India is a nation in a hurry. That means I have the young population which I have right now, and I may not have the same young population which can reap dividends maybe in 2050.
Right.
So, if I want to reap the benefits, certain policies should be short term and immediate. I can't wait and implement. And that means there is a balance between both. So, I'll have a long term perspective also. At the same time, I have to handle the shocks, etc.
Right. So that means like both the concepts are good. The Preya is equally important as Śreya, but we have to identify that what things are immediately needed from the perspective of a country in order to run that particular sprint form mein marathon, or the Śreya is also equally important because...
No. Here it's not that the Preya is important. It is only that I'll run a marathon like a sprint. That means there are long-term objectives which we are going to come up. But these things have to be implemented immediately. That is also part of Sreya only.
Right.
I'll put it as Sreya only because it will give me an everlasting benefit in the long term.
Right. Yes. So identification of the things which are immediately important has to be done first. So firstly, prioritize those particular things which are going to be important from the perspective of the country for the immediate growth, and then gradually talking towards the capital development.
Yeah.
So the delayed gratification in that particular side.
I'll give you a simple example. For example, if I have to talk about skill development, okay, how much are we spending on health? For example, let's say we have to spend around at least 2.5% of our GDP. But definitely in terms of our spending on health, it is not up to the mark. Okay, and health is something very important. Okay, China is spending, let's say, around 10 to 11% of their GDP on education. Now, these are some things which are going to build human capital in the long term. So, along with investment, this is also investment on human capital. But this can't be done maybe after 10 years or 15 years. This has to be done right now and right away. Especially health, we could have done better in terms of how much we spend as a percentage of GDP, because our national health policy itself says spend 2.5% of GDP, which we have not reached. It's a very important thing. So few things are important in the short term. Immediately we have to do this for an everlasting benefit. That is, the benefit comes long term, but the things have to be implemented right now.
Exactly. So basically there's surveys highlighting a lot of important concepts. It is also linking the economic concept with the broader philosophical aspect that will eventually ensure the development of India as the Viksit Bharat by 2047. So I think we have substantially talked about these concepts and what is the practical implementation of that. So thank you Piyush sir, thank you Ram sir for joining this particular session, and I think the student might have also got a bit more clear idea about these particular concepts. And for, I think, more detailed discussion, I think you are already taking the classes for the economic service sprint, so there they can get further more clarity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with this, we are concluding this particular discussion. And for more discussion, you can join the economic survey classes. Thank you.